Hi, we're Steve and Audra, and we enjoy exploring the world around us. A while back, we checked a few items off our bucket list with a road trip along the Pacific Coast Highway, starting from the eclectic city of San Francisco and ending in the mountains of Whistler in British Columbia. Along the way, we experienced amazing things, such as the majestic Golden Gate Bridge in the morning fog, riding down the steep hills of San Francisco in the famous cable cars, fascinating wildlife, rocky beaches, cliffs and sea stacks, tidal pools teeming with interesting sea life, towering redwood trees, mountainous sand dunes, lush rainforest, snow-capped mountains, city skylines, and some good people watching. This was the trip of a lifetime, and we're excited to share it with you. We hope you'll enjoy the epic journey. Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for another episode.
We were hoping to show you some progress with the kitchen, but we've had quite a bit going on, some family stuff. We did make a little bit of progress with the kitchen, but it's just not quite ready to show you yet.
Yeah, we have not had enough time, or as much time as we would have liked, and now we're gearing up to get on the road. We're going to head north again to spend some time with family.
So today what we would like to do is actually take a look back at a trip that we took that kind of launched us into considering van life.
So a few years ago, we took a trip of a lifetime, or we'd consider it that, to celebrate our 20th anniversary. We flew into San Francisco and drove up the coast.
We're not normally city people, but San Francisco makes the list of our favorite cities.
After spending some time there, we made our way north and saw some pretty incredible things along the way. We hope you'll enjoy coming along with us and revisiting some of our trip.
Make sure to stick around to the end, where we'll show you how this trip got us to where we are today.
Right here in this van. The iconic Golden Gate Bridge is quite the structure to behold. I'm so glad we got to experience this bridge when the fog, also known as Carl, was settled in. It was very surreal. The bridge is quite an engineering feat, rising 746 feet above the water, 1.7 miles long, made with 80,000 miles of wire and approximately 600 rivets in each tower. It was designed to move up and down 10 feet. Isn't that incredible? It provides quite the photo op, sitting there so pretty over the bay with its iconic orange color.
Our next stop was the quite touristy Embarcadero. We enjoyed watching the antics of the sea lions at Pier 39. We try never to pass up the opportunity to observe wildlife, even if in a touristy area. The seals did not disappoint. They were quite entertaining.
We walked around the pier for a little while and enjoyed the atmosphere, which reminded us of the boardwalks of the Northeast that we grew up experiencing. We headed to Fisherman's Wharf, where Steve enjoyed some street performers, before checking out the interesting Musée Mécanique, an interesting museum featuring over 300 vintage and novel coin-operated arcade games. We had a pretty fierce battle of skee-ball here.
I also got to play a couple of my favorite games, Miss Pac-Man and Pole Position.
We stopped for some photos at the beautiful Palace of Fine Arts. This monumental structure was constructed in 1915 for the Panama Pacific Exposition. Steve gave me a pretty good laugh when he admitted to thinking this swan and goose were a male and female swan couple. Don't tell him I told you that, though.
Audra's jam-packed itinerary took us to Chinatown next. It's the oldest in North America and the largest Chinese enclave outside of Asia.
There was a lot to see in our very limited time, so next we went in pursuit of riding some cable cars. This is such an iconic thing to do in San Francisco, and we had so much fun. We also checked out the cable car museum, where we could watch the huge wheels that pull the cars throughout the whole city.
We were pretty exhausted by this point, so we took a break at the quirky Galleria Cafe across from the museum in Nob Hill.
The next morning we headed to the famous steep and winding Lombard Street. We had attempted to visit the day before, but it had been packed with tourists, cars lined up waiting to drive down the street, and a tour bus crowd taking photos from the bottom. I can't even imagine what it's like to live on this street. We finally had our chance to make it down the fun drive before leaving the city to head north up the coast.
We took some time to enjoy the views of the bridge from the north side at Vista Point. Then we headed into the Marin Headlands to take in the views of the bay from Mount Tam. Unfortunately, we got stuck in Memorial Day traffic, which put us significantly behind our schedule, and we had to cut out several stops we'd planned for the day.
We were in awe when we reached the area along the Pacific Coast Highway that boasted views of the water, coastal cliffs, and sea stacks. We were tempted to stop at every new view we encountered. It was amazing.
After being stuck in traffic and getting very travel weary and hungry, it was a relief to make it to Bodega Bay and find a nice restaurant right on the water with views of some playful seals. An added bonus was that the restaurant was a film location for Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds.
After a night at a hotel in Fort Bragg, we woke up and took a walk out to Glass Beach. This was a treat for me because the beach is known for its abundance of sea glass, and I enjoyed the rocky terrain and tidal pools. We also spotted a lone harbor seal.
The next highlight of the day was driving through the massive chandelier tree in Leggett. It was a pretty neat experience. We debated whether or not to stop at Confusion Hill to experience the Gravity House, a kitschy roadside tourist trap, and gave in. It's a structure built around optical illusions that really mess with your senses. You feel like you're going to fall over and experience the need to stand upright when you are already standing upright.
I don't know.
The place was also crammed with random, weird stuff everywhere, and boasts the world's tallest freestanding redwood chainsaw carving.
Our favorite part of this leg of the trip was definitely driving through the towering redwood trees. These trees are so massive. We felt like dwarfs in comparison. We stopped along the way to check out some well-known redwood trees.
Hey, no taking naps.
We spent some time in Humboldt Redwood State Park to check out the Founder's Tree and hike around the area a little bit.
Oops.
Big Tree was, well, big. At 286 feet tall and over 20 feet wide, it was incredible to behold. Photos and videos just don't do it justice. If we thought the California coast was amazing, the Oregon coast seemed to be even more amazing, if that's possible. We made some stops along the Samuel H. Boardman State Scenic Corridor, with views of natural bridges, coves, rock formations, and a pretty nice sunset. The next morning, we woke up across the street from Bandon Beach, and this was definitely one of the highlights of the trip for me. Look at these views, and better yet, for me anyway, there were tidal pools. Score. We finally were in the right place at the right time where I could explore and observe starfish, sea anemones, and other marine life. I was definitely in my happy place. Next, we stopped in the Oregon Dunes National Recreation Area at the John Dellenbach Dunes Trailhead. That's me running up on the huge dune that has a height of about 500 feet above sea level. I'll be honest, I giggled much of the way up this. I had a blast. I know it may be weird, but this may have been my favorite experience of the whole trip. I took off my shoes, rolled up my pants, and ran and walked up to the top of the dune. It was so much fun. I guess I liked it because it was so different than anything I'd done before, and while at the top, it seemed almost like I was on another planet.
So how was it, Aubs?
It was awesome. Definitely worth the $5.
Did you get sand on your feet?
Not very much. You get more at the beach and... Man, it was wild. Really steep at the end and super windy.
We stopped to take in some views of the Heceta Head Lighthouse and spotted some more sea lions. Then we headed to Cook's Chasm, an inlet with a blowhole best observed at high tide. We timed it fairly well so we could see the water coming in and shooting in the air, but failed to properly capture it on camera.
Next, we made another stop in the little seaside town of Newport, where yes, we enjoyed seeing more sea lions. It appears one must have just had a bad dream, which led to waking up all the rest of the clan. They sure were loudmouths. We also spotted a happy little seal swimming in the bay. Next, we crossed into the state of Washington. Our first stop was Ruby Beach. The beaches of Washington are unique, with the masses of driftwood that wash ashore. The area has an abundance of trees, and river flooding causes trees to topple and then get washed out to sea, where storms then toss them back up onto the beaches.
We stopped nearby at the Hoh Rainforest and Olympic National Park and got to experience another close encounter with wildlife.
We also spent some time hiking the Hull of Mosses Trail, which I found to be a very magical experience. It felt like we were in the middle of a fairy tale.
The next day, we were back on the road.
Our way up to Hurricane Ridge, we were fortunate to spot a mama bear and her 2 cubs foraging a ways up the hill above the road. How cool is that? What a neat moment. And we wouldn't have even noticed if someone else hadn't pointed it out to us. When we made it to the top of Hurricane Ridge, we didn't have a lot of time before we needed to make it to our next leg of the trip. So we got a recommendation from one of the rangers on a good short hike to take. I believe we did the High Ridge Trail, which was just a mile round trip. The scenery was absolutely breathtaking as we hiked past grazing deer, alpine flowers, and fir trees, and then took in Sound of Music-esque views of the snow-capped mountains and low-lying clouds. We wish we'd had more time here, but we had a ferry to catch.
Thankfully, we made it in time to catch the Bainbridge Island ferry that would take us across the Puget Sound to Seattle. It was super windy and cold, but we enjoyed our first glimpses of the Seattle skyline and also spotted a few dolphins during the crossing. We thoroughly enjoyed our time at Pike Place Market, especially the famous fish market and the street performers. One of our favorites was the band, Transient Vultures. We just loved their unique sound.
Have you heard of Seattle's famous gum wall? Believe it or not, they had just cleaned off the gum not long before we came.
Next up was riding up to the top of the Space Needle. We were disappointed that the needle was under construction, but we still enjoyed it and the amazing views of the city.
We also took in more views of the city from Cary Park. Seattle also makes the cut for our favorite cities. We would definitely like to visit here again. Next, we took the train to Vancouver and at the last minute decided to rent a car and head to Whistler. That meant missing out on some of the things on our itinerary, including the search for some authentic poutine. But we really enjoyed being back up in the mountains.
We started out in the village of Whistler, where it was sunny and warm, and ascended to an elevation of approximately 7,500 feet, where there was stormy conditions with snow, sleet, and really low visibility as we rode the lift up into the clouds and high alpine terrain. We had the joy of being stuck in a lift with a family that argued the entire way.
Which Matthews traverses the ice wall, which is short. Matthews traverses short, so the ice wall is short.
That's fine, but we gotta get
And then
there.
you have to turn around at the end of Matthews Traverse, or else.
Once at the top, we got on the peak-to-peak gondola from Whistler Peak to Blackcomb Peak. Peak to Peak holds the record for the highest above-ground cable car in the world at 1,427 feet.
When we weren't in a cloud, the views were absolutely amazing. It was fun here to watch people sledding down the hill and to play in the snow a bit ourselves. But the highlight, definitely this marmot. We want to know which came first, the marmot or the sign. How funny that he was perfectly posed right above the "Do Not Disturb the Wildlife" sign. He was quite popular, but how could he not be? He was adorable.
We headed back down the mountain and made our way back to Vancouver Crossing over the Lions Gate Bridge. We returned our rental car and made it to the Amtrak station in the nick of time before returning to Seattle for our flight back home. What an absolutely incredible trip.
So we absolutely loved our adventure along the coast, and we hope you enjoyed coming along with us.
It was such an amazing experience. There were a few locations where we actually didn't film that much.
Or at all.
Yeah, unfortunately. That were kind of neat, especially for somebody like me that's a bit of a film buff. One of which was Industrial Light and Magic.
In San Francisco.
That's where George Lucas has his office. Like, that's where they did a lot of work for Star Wars and a lot of other films.
So it was closed when we were there, but we peeked in and it was kind of just fun to see it, and we took some pictures with Yoda outside.
Another neat place was where they filmed Mrs. Doubtfire, or at least the house.
Also in San Francisco.
Yeah, in San Francisco. That was really neat.
A neat thing about that spot is there's an unofficial tribute to Robin Williams. People have signed their names on the sidewalk there and written messages to him, and also like on the tree in front of the house. So that was just kind of a neat experience.
Another spot that I really enjoyed, since the movie had kind of such an impact on my youth, was where they shot the movie Goonies in Astoria. The house is there where they shot the jail scene,
the bowling alley.
the bowling alley. There's probably a few others, but those are the ones we got to visit. I really enjoyed that. It's just a neat little town to begin with, but then to know that they filmed all these scenes there was neat.
Right. Yeah, it is a neat town. We also saw the Cannon Beach where that famous sea stack is. So I will admit it, I am a Twilight fan. So one of the coolest things for me was going to Forks. They have a lot of stuff there, like a tribute to the movie, so I took some silly photos and we went and saw like the beach and different things that are in the movies, so that was kind of cool too. And then some of my other favorite things that kind of as we think back to the trip, like we mentioned, San Francisco was such a neat place. It's just so diverse. It's got all these different districts that are just so unique. You know, you go from the beach to up on the hill, like the steep hills, and they've got different kind of like art kind of stuff, and the cable cars. And something that I really like there, we didn't film because Steve, it was actually after we flew in, Steve was so tired he took a nap. I actually walked through the botanical gardens by myself, so I just took pictures, but I loved the gardens there and some of the stuff that was just growing. Some of them were like huge, tall, spike-like flowers that were gorgeous. It was just such a neat place. And then another place I really loved was Bandon Beach in Oregon. It was just so cool because of all the sea stacks, and then we were there at low tide, so we were able to see the tidal pools, and that's one of my favorites. We got to see some starfish and anemones, and like I would love to go back there and spend more time. That was just right up my alley.
It was
That's
also
fun.
here that I realized that Audra has a fascination with sand dunes, right?
Yes, and I have no idea why. We discovered these sand dunes in Oregon, and I decided to run up to the top. I don't even know how high it is. It's like, oh, I think we said earlier in the video, like a few hundred feet above sea level. I took my shoes up and I ran up the dune, and it just made me giggle. I think I giggled like the whole way. So again, I don't know why I enjoy it so much, but that was super fun. And then another really neat thing was the whole rainforest, and that's the other amazing thing as we drove up the coast, like how vastly different it is, like from the beach and the rocky coastline to the mountains to the even our rainforest that we have. And it was just really magical there. Like everything was so green and like fern covered, and I took way too many pictures there, but it was so cool.
So one of the things I really enjoyed was driving up the coastline. Just beautiful from one location to another, just beautiful scenery. And we saw a lot of RV related vehicles pulled off to the side, so maybe that's kind of what got our thinking going as far as van life, RV life. So another area that I really like is Pike Place Market in Seattle. Very busy, very active market, lots going on. From the guys tossing the fish back and forth every so often.
That was super fun.
They make quite a show of that. That's fun. There's just a lot of things, a lot of vendors.
And you really enjoyed the street performers.
Yeah, I'm always a sucker for street performers.
Some good musicians.
And musicians. I can stand and watch them for quite a while.
There were some beautiful flowers there and a lot of food options, so it was fun to try a few different food options there.
One of the things we also really enjoyed was the wildlife. In addition to all the beautiful scenery that you come across, is the variety of wildlife you can see. Some of the things was bears, a mama bear with her two baby bears. That was cool. All the sea lions.
Noisy sea lions.
What was one of your favorite?
Oh, the marmot. The marmot we saw in Whistler
Yeah.
was like the best. It was so funny. So the thing that stood out the most about this trip is that first of all, it was really jam-packed. We did tons of research, like with this whole long list of things that we wanted to see, and as we drove, because we had to make it to like a new place every night, we had to make reservations far in advance. We were always limited with time, so we always had to figure out like what we were going to cut out. You know, we kind of had to like tweak things as we went, so we tried to see as much as we could. We kind of look at it like we kind of got like a good taste of that area, but we definitely want to go back. There was definitely downsides of having a rental car, and like I said, having to like have reservations that we had to like get to point A, point B. We had the whole trip, so that really got us thinking, how could we do it different if we were to go back? And so we started thinking about SUVs, like just throwing maybe a mattress in the back, driving out there, and kind of going at our own pace. But then all of a sudden we learned about the whole world of van life, and that just really changed things. So that brings us to where we are today, here in this van. If you're new to the channel, you can learn more about our whole process. We have a lot of videos out there of our build and our travels, so we invite you to check those out.
So now we look forward to finishing out our van build and exploring the rest of the country.
So thanks for coming along with us today. If you want to make sure you don't miss future adventures, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell if you haven't already. And we love hearing from you and appreciate you guys. So leave us a comment, hit that like, anything helps.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.